So good evening everyone. Welcome for yet another session in our AP Fair. This is our fourth weekend for in this AP Fair, and this session is going to be about AP Biology, and we'll try to understand the different aspect of this particular exam, how to prepare for it, what are the different things, what are the how are the credits for the specific questions, like how the metrics are there. So all these questions will be answered. Uh, and one more thing to inform you that we are going to stream this live, so you can rewatch this whenever you want for your own, considering your own comfort. And lastly, you can feel free to post your queries. I'll moderate all those questions at the end of the session. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over the session to Navya ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Hi,
Ma'am,
everyone.
yeah, it's clear. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. This is Navya, and I'm going to try giving you a brief overview of what the AP Biology test looks like. I say brief because that's about how much I can tell you in 30 minutes, but I'll try to do my best. I will explain as much as I can what you need to get started if you're planning to prepare on your own, if you're planning to take coaching or whatever. What you need to know before you start, I'm going to try to cover everything today. Yeah. So I will be sharing my screen. Uh, just 1 second. Okay, so AP Biology for this year, right? Test overview. This year is a little different from last year, as you all know. So last year, taking it wasn't just for biology, any other subject as well. The whole course wasn't tested on, the whole syllabus wasn't tested on, right? So the format is a little different from last year. So we're not going to discuss anything about last year, but getting into this year. The test format is for 3 hours. So the test is for 3 hours. You have two sections. The first section is 1.5 hours, which has 60 multiple choice questions. So unlike other AP exams and even unlike SAT and ACT, where you are short on time, you're not going to be short on time here, right? So it's not really testing you on your ability to answer fast, but it's testing you on your ability to answer correctly. Yeah, so that's important here. So you don't really have to rush. You have more than a minute for every question. And of course, these questions are a little lengthier. So I know we're talking about multiple choice 60 questions, but they will give you, and I'll try if I can show you one example as such, but they will give you, say, a theory, right? And they will ask you which statement goes along with this theory, right? So it's not just, a small MCQ that you can just pick one word answer or something like that. You'll have to read and analyze each and every statement so that you can answer accordingly and say, which answer supports the theory or which one arguments against the theory, right? So depending on what the question's asking you. The MCQ questions are also lengthier. They're not, one line that you can just read in a few seconds and answer. So that's also the reason why it's 1.5 hours for the section 1. Right now, both the sections that you have in biology are divided equally, be it in terms of time or be it in terms of scores, right? So we have to kind of focus as much on MCQ techniques, solving and being able to get the MCQs right, versus also being able to do a free response question correctly. Yeah. Now, of course, for a free response question, you need to know more in depth, right? You need to understand what theory it is, how will you explain it, how will you support your idea. Maybe most of the questions will give you, say, data representation, and they will ask you to interpret that. So that a question like that usually in other subjects will appear only on, say, a free response question, but in biology you can also see such a question in your MCQ side. So they can give you a graph and they can ask you to interpret that and choose an answer accordingly, right? Section 2 is your free response question, like any other AP exam. You have 10 minutes. So they say 1 hour, 30 minutes, but out of that, 10 minutes is your reading time strictly. So you cannot start writing. And 80 minutes is your working time. You get 6 questions, right? Now here you have 2 long questions and 4 short questions, right? So the 2 long ones, and I'm going to get into the detail as to, how we divide that. But again, all of these together form 50% of your exam score. So 50% comes from section 1, which is your MCQs, your objective type answers, and 50% comes from your free response question, section 2. You do have a break in the middle of those 2 sections. It's a quick 10 minutes break. So just, if you have to go to the restroom or drink water or anything, that's for that, right? You are allowed allowed a calculator because it's a biology exam, I understand, but there are you do have to statistically kind of carry out experiments or talk about experiments. For that you will need a formula sheet and a calculator, right? So that's also a part of the curriculum, and you're allowed that, so that you don't have to memorize any formulas as such. They will all be given, and you can kind of refer to it in the exam. Okay, now if this is clear, we move on to what does the exam contain, right? What's the content? What are we going to be tested on? So what the College Board has done this time is that they've divided it into 4 big ideas that you can be tested on, right? So these are not chapter names, these are not unit names, these are just concepts that you need to know in order to kind of, get into the biology course and start studying it. So 4 main ideas: evolution, energetics, information storage and transmission, systems, interactions. Now, as we get into, what the units or what the chapters are, you will find that these ideas, say, for example, let's talk about evolution, right? So evolution is the process, of evolving, how an animal or a body or how humankind has evolved over time, starting from history, and what drives the diversity and unity of life, right? So say we're talking about evolution. Now, it'll just not be one chapter that talks about it. So it's not just, Darwin's theory of natural selection or survival of the fittest. It's not just that. Of course, that's a core part of it. But you'll also talk about evolution in, say, heredity, right? When you talk about genes kind of passing information traits to the next generation, that's also evolution. So you will see these 4 ideas spanning across different units in your syllabus. They'll not just be, okay, so evolution is chapter 1, chapter 2. It's not like that. You will see evolution kind of coming up, the concept of evolution coming up in different chapters in varying degrees, right? Energetics talks about how does the biological system, be it for an animal, be it for a human, how does that evolve, and how does that kind of the molecular building, the functions that a cell carries out, how does that happen, right? So reproduction, maintaining homeostasis. Homeostasis is the like the baseline state of your body, right? So how is that maintained for each and every cell, right? At a cellular level, how does that happen? That's energetics. Information storage and transmission, of course, genes, right? DNA is the storage storage powerhouse for all of our DNA material, right? So, or genetic material. So heredity, again, see, now I talked about heredity would be covered in information storage and transmission, and also in evolution. So if you're doing a chapter called heredity, it will have both of these big ideas kind of spanning across that chapter, right? So information storage and transmission, you have to know chromosomes, DNA, meiosis, mitosis, and we'll get into that later. But that's what's required. System interactions, how does one react to the environment, right? So the stimuli response connections that we have, how does that happen? How do systems interact with their complex properties of functions and of surroundings? All of that will come under systems interactions, right? Now, these are the main 4 big ideas. Now, how do we start studying them, right? We understand this, but at a smaller level, these can be broken down into 8 different units. Again, these are not chapters. These are 8 different units, right? So if you pick up any book, say, for example, you pick up Barron, and Barron is a good source, you will not see 8 chapters over there. You will see probably around 12 to 13 chapters, right? And so what that happens is some can be, say, for example, heredity, right? That's not such a lengthy chapter. So that can be covered in 1 chapter. That's why there are not 16 chapters. But something like cell structure and function, right, or something like natural selection will have 2 chapters devoted to it, right? And of course with subtopics. So the 8 to 11%, the percentages over here is the weightage of the kind of questions or the number of questions that you can get in the exam. So out of the 4 big ideas, we can divide them into these 8 units. Chemistry of life, that is 8 to 11%. So you can get almost, say, out of 100 MCQs that you have, you will get about 8 to 10 questions on that, right? Coming to free response questions, mostly you do get a free response question from, say, natural selection, right? You almost always get a question from that. You also get questions from cell structure and function in free response questions. And then, of course, the 4 short questions that you have, it can come from cell communication and cell cycle. Gene expression and regulation can also, get a free response question. They can ask you for how do traits get passed on. That's a free response question that you can get. So cell structure and function is 10 to 13%. So almost, say, 7 to 8 questions in MCQs, and maybe one short question from a free response question, right? Cellular energetics, 12 to 16%. Cell communication and cell cycle is again 10 to 15%. Heredity is 8 to 11. So this is the least, right? This and chemistry of life have the least. Maximum is natural selection, 13 to 20%, right? Cell communication and cell cycle and ecology have 10 to 15%. So both are evenly kind of divided, right? Now let's get into what do these 8 units really talk about, right? What do we need to study under chemistry of life? And this is all given, and I'll walk you through the College Board website as well, but all of this is given there, right? And you can get access to this. It's a 200-page document that has detailed stuff about, what you need to study in how much detail. And what you can also do in that document is you can do like a Command F or a Control F, like a find function. And look, if you're confused, say for example, if you want to know if photosynthesis is going to be a part of your, syllabus or not, you can just type photosynthesis and it will show you wherever they've mentioned it, right? So say for example, you want to talk about, you want to see if they're going to ask you about cytoskeleton, or, even a very small topic like respiration or something, right? Just type it in there and you will see if it is going to be tested, you will see that somewhere, mentioned in the book and I'll show you the book in that course guideline that they've put up in College Board, right? Okay, so like I told you, there are 8 units, so we can divide this into not 8 different chapters. Some chapters will have, say for example, cell structure and function will have 2 chapters devoted to it in most of the books, right? And of course it'll differ from a Barron to a Princeton. But if you are looking to study on your own, I would highly recommend a Barron's. That's really good. A Princeton review is also good. And of course, make sure you're solving all last year papers, especially for the free response question. That's important. And again, that's all given in your College Board website, right? They have given you sample free response answers as well to last year papers, and the scoring guidelines. So on what terminologies do you need to mention to kind of, get the score that you want to, right? Or you get marked a full on that answer. Right. Also, a lot of people ask me what's the prerequisite, right? Do you need to know biology concepts? Yes. So even if you go to the College Board website, they will tell you that the prerequisite is that you need to have biology and chemistry already studied, right? So that's, of course, is going to be a major plus point if you have studied that. It's kind of a prerequisite as well. Recommended prerequisite, that's what they call it. And this will gain you credits in, once you enter college, right? So it will give you at least, I think, depending on the college again, 4 to 6 credits. And yeah, so of course, it's going to be highly helpful to anyone who wants to further, study in the field of biology, right? Anything to do with biology or even chemistry for that matter. Yeah. Okay, so talking about chemistry of life, that's the first unit, and it has about, let's go back, it has about 8 to 11% weightage, right? Here, and they've also given it to you here, right? 8 to 11%. Structure of water and hydrogen bonding. Again, these are high level topics that you need to cover, right? Elements of life, introduction to macromolecules, properties of macromolecules, structures and functions of it, and nucleic acids, right? So that's just a high level what you need to cover in those chemistry of life. Cell structure and function, again, plasma membrane, how does the membrane work? What is the cell compartmentalization? What is, osmoregulation, osmosis, diffusion, all those, properties, any property to do with plasma membrane and cell function will be covered in Unit 2, right? And that's 10 to 13% of the weightage. Unit 3, cellular energetics. Here we get into enzymes. Also a very important topic here is photosynthesis and cellular respiration, right? So anaerobic, aerobic respiration, all of that comes under cellular energetics, right? How does the cell kind of, communicate and respire? All of that is here. Unit 4, cell communication, cell cycle. So Unit 3 and Unit 4 are kind of linked, right? You will find few chapters that are overlapping here. So cell cycle, right? Signal transduction of the feedback process of any cell communication. All of that is under Unit 4. How do cells communicate within a body, right? So even when we talk about neuron firing, right? How does one neuron kind of communicate to the other one? What is an electrochemical transduction process? Or, how is message? So if I'm touching something hot, how does my brain know that I'm touching something hot and I need to move my hand away from there, right? That's all cell communication, right? So yes, so that's covered under this, and it has 10 to 15% of the weightage, okay? Coming to 6, so gene expression regulation, of course, this has to do everything with biotechnology, anything that you would study in biotechnology, like DNA and RNA structure, replication, meiosis, mitosis, gene expression. There is a lot about mutations as well. So some genetic hereditary abnormalities also you'll have to discuss here, like Down syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome. All these are also going to be a part of gene expression regulation, right? Your XY chromosomes, all of that, right? Unit 7 is natural selection. So this has the highest, and like you can see, it also has the maximum number of subtopics under it, and has the highest weightage, 13 to 20%. This is all about your Darwin's theory. It's about common ancestry, evidence of evolution, how we have a common gene pool, and from there it gets passed on from one generation to another. Which part, how is that one trait is passed on and the other is not? All of that is covered under natural selection, right? Extinction, origin of life on Earth. So it also has a lot of historical point of view, right? So a lot of Charles Darwin theories anyway from a historical point of view. So all of that is covered here. I forgot to mention, but if you see, all of these have an IST or like an EVO written here. So this comes from the 4 main ideas, right? So let me go back and show you that. So SI would be system interactions, energetics, EV is your evolution, and then there's energetics, and IST is information storage and transmission. So they're just kind of mapping it out here for you as to which one kind of goes with which chapters. So energetics, ENE would be energetics, right? So these are the subtopics under it, okay? So just so that you know what these mean, right? Okay. Last unit is going to be ecology, again 10 to 15%. So more or less all chapters, or all units I should rather say, have the same weightage, right? They have almost 10 to 15%. Some have a little higher, like natural selection, others have a little lower, right? But almost all units kind of you have to focus on equally. Ecology, of course, this ecology has anything to do with your environment, right? What is the stimuli and the reaction response, right? All of that talks about your biodiversity, what happens when the ecosystem is disrupted, right? Energy flow through the different ecosystems. All of that is covered under ecology, right? Okay, so I hope this is clear. This is the syllabus, or the scope of the topics that you need to know. Now, what about how will they frame questions for you, right? How are they going to give you questions based on these? So again, there are 6 ways that they can question you, or the questions that you will have will be either of these 6 types, right? One is concept explanation. So around 25 to 33% of your questions will be concept explanation, right? So this is where they will ask you to explain a concept, right? It could be explain a concept through supporting data, or it could be through kind of just listing out the key points for it, or just that they've given you like in free response questions, they've given you a word and you have to kind of explain that with reference to application based. And again, another thing to kind of take into consideration is that they'll never just ask you to recite a theory, right? That's the difference between an AP exam and just your normal school exams, is that in an AP exam you will have to apply it, right? You will have to show them application knowledge rather than just learned up knowledge for that matter, right? So concept application will be around 25 to 30% questions. Then visual representation. Now in this year, since we are going digital, right, they will not really ask you to draw any diagram or draw a graph, but they could ask you to interpret, right? So interpret a diagram or interpret a graph. That could come, that is visual representation, right? So 16 to 24% of the questions are that, and you can get that in MCQ or free response questions, right? Both you can see that in both the places. Questions and methods. So this is, of course, you also need to know how to carry out an experiment, right? And that will be a part of your units as well. So research and experimentation has 8 to 14%. How do you carry out an experiment? How do you kind of support a hypothesis? Even statistics. So apart, like I told you, you do have formula sheets that you will get. So to support your hypothesis, you will need to kind of talk about the chi-square test and inferential statistics and data statistics and all of that. So that's your questions and methods. Representing and describing data. Again, so visual representation and representing and describing data will be a little similar. So that's kind of overlapping. And this again has 8 to 14% of your questions based on this. Statistical test and data analysis, again, you have your sheet, so it's not like you have to mug up your formulas at all. It will be there for your reference. You can go through it, but those formulas will only be helpful to you if you understand the underlying concept to it, right? So that's the main thing. They will give you diagrams, they will give you graphs to interpret in MCQs as well as in FRQs, right? So be mindful of that. Argumentation. Now that's another, if you can see, that has a lot of weightage as well, 20 to 25% here. So this is also important. They will tell you to kind of back whatever concept there is, back up with your own inference of it, right? So you can't just kind of, recite a theory and say this is what it is. You also have to tell them your side of it. What is your interpretation of it, right? So that's argumentation. They will ask you to kind of give points for and against. That can be a question, right? So, give some points that support this theory or some that argue against it, right? Because see, if when we do subjects like biology and psychology and stuff like that, you always do have another side of the theory as well. Some researcher who doesn't agree with the findings or who doesn't support one kind of hypothesis, right? So you will have to give the other side of the theories as well in few cases. So that's your argumentation. So these are the 6 science practices, or the six type of questions that they can give you, right? Okay, now this is just a brief interpretation of what you can get in your free response questions. So like we talked about, these 6 concepts, right? Concept explanation, visual representation, question and methods, representing and describing data, statistical, and argumentation. Now, like you see, I've just given you too long and too short, just an example of that. So say for mostly a long question will talk about concept explanation. All questions will talk about concept application and argumentation, right? So those are 2 things that you will have to kind of interpret and write about. Some will talk about questions and methods, right? So if you see visual representation is not ticked here, question 5 and question 6, which are not mentioned here, will probably give you 1 or 2 visual representation in which you won't have to draw it, but just interpret it, right? Interpret the data. Yeah, so if you see question 1 almost is testing you on all 6 fields except visual representation, right? So it's not that one question will only test you on one thing, it will kind of give you a mixture of all, right? I've also given it here, question 1, interpreting and evaluating experimental results. The question 2 can have one with graphing as well. And then question 3, scientific investigation, conceptual analysis, analyze model or visual representation. Question 6, analyze data, right? But concept explanation and argumentation are 2 things that will be covered in all the type of questions that you do, right? Okay. This is just a screenshot of what kind of questions you've gotten in the previous, I'm talking about the long FRQs, right, that you've gotten in previous papers. So 2019 talked about natural selection, protein synthesis, signal transduction pathway, right? That was one question. And again, when we say, 2 long questions, it's not just one concept that they'll ask you in that one question. They will have subparts, right? And question 2 will also have subparts. So the 2 long questions will not just be one topic, they'll have subparts under it, right? So that's why it's a long question. Question 2 had a graph construct, so you had to interpret it, right? Earlier, when you talk about construct, right, that they've given here, you actually have to draw it. But in this time's exam, they're not going to ask you to draw it. So you'll just have to kind of interpret and give your readings and back up your findings with, data and analysis. So question 2 had experimental design, graph and population dynamics, right? So I'm not going to go through all of this, but this you can readily, so if you see here chi-square, calculate, right? So you also do, for this, something like this, you will have to refer to the formula sheet that you have, right? Okay, so this is readily available, on College Board website. So let me also show you that. Give me a second. I'll also show you what, the College Board website has. So that you know where to go to if you have any questions. Yes, so this should be your Bible. Definitely anything that you need to ask, any question that you have will be resolved from this website, right? Everything is given in detail, and I'll show you how to kind of navigate through it. So what you can do is just go to AP Student College Board website. They've given you the AP courses and exams. You're going to go into the science section. So sciences, under that biology, right? We click on that. They've also given you the exam date. So you have paper in school and then digital in school and at home. So May 14, May 27, June 11, right? So these are the dates, and they've given you the 8 units that we just discussed, right? This is just an overview. Then we can also go to the course. Okay. Now, in the course, they have two things: about the course and about the exam, right? So both, make sure that you kind of go through both tabs. So here again, they've given you exam details. They've told you a college course equivalent. So I hope all of you are aware that you are marked on a 1 to 5, scoring, AP score. So 5 being the best score, and that is what we should be aiming for. That is equivalent to, say, like an A plus in your college degree, right? Then below that is 4, a score of 4, which is, an equivalent to like an A negative or a B positive, right? B plus in your grades. And then of course there's 3 to 1, those are not acceptable. You should be aiming for a 4 or a 5 higher, right? Okay. Recommended prerequisite, that, like I said, biology and chemistry in school, that is kind of necessary, because in this, when you are studying, you will come across terminologies that, if you haven't done biology and chemistry before, you will have trouble understanding, right? You will have to put it. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's highly recommended. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here is what they've given you, the course content. You can expand all, and then they give you like a weightage, and they've given you topics may include. So this is again very high level that they've given you, right? Weightage and what it includes at a high level. Now let's go into the details, right? So AP Biology course and exam description. Let's click on that. Yeah. So this is the 230-page book that I'm talking about. This has everything possible that you need to know, right? And what I was saying was that you can also do a Command F over here if you think, there is. Let me just show you the contents page, right? So if you think there is something that, you're not sure if you need to study that, or in how much detail, all of that is given here. Just kind of do a Command F and you will get into that, right? It'll show you what you need to study, and if that, say for example, photosynthesis, right? If you need to study that, that's going to be in here for sure, right? Okay, so this tells you, of course, there's an introduction bit of it, but then they also have this course framework, and they've given you everything in detail over here. Let me just show you one. Right, so let's look at unit 1. So they've given you everything that you need to know over here, right? Suggested skills, and then also like in detail, sample instructional activities. And then each topic is subdivided, and they've told you what kind of essential knowledge you need, right? So for example, the subcomponents of biological molecules and their sequence determine the properties of that molecule. So we're talking about hydrogen bonding, right? Structure of water and hydrogen bonding. So they'll tell you exactly how much detail you need to know, right? So this is, again, an excellent document, 230 pages. I know it's a lot, but it'll give you everything that you need, right? And I think they've also here given you a few sample questions. Let me see if I can get to that. So again, and of course, in the website itself, they've given you previous solved papers. So let me see if I can pick up one. Yeah, so instructional strategies, I don't think they've given you a sample question over here, but I can show you on the website itself. They've given you, if we go to about the exam, yeah, so here they've given you, what the 2 sections, 1 hour 30 minutes for each, 50% of your score, 60 questions and 6 questions. And then you have like this, you have your 2019 AP Biology free response question and scoring guidelines. You can click on it, see more, and you can download these, right? They also have scoring guidelines for you, right? And then they also have an AP Biology course and exam description. This is a smaller document. So if you just need an overview, you can go to that. And then there's free response question and scoring information archive. So this has solved papers from earlier than 2019, right? So if you click on this, you'll get to it, right? 2018, 2017, all of this is there, right? Excellent source. You don't need to go anywhere else. If you're looking for free response questions, everything is right here, right? Okay. And yes, like I mentioned, I think this covers everything at a high level that you need to know about the AP Biology course, right? Other than this, Barron's, Princeton, excellent resources for you to refer to. You also have YouTube resources where for the last year, AP College Board had kind of put up a few videos. They are actually very helpful. You can go through them as well. YouTube also has few other I don't remember the names, but there are few channels dedicated to AP biology courses, right? And they do explain, concepts in, visual pictorial ways. So that's also good. But if you have your balance in Princeton, you can just, thoroughly go through that, and it should cover everything, right? And make sure any book, because the test is not from one particular book, right? And all of you know that it's a combination of many books. They pick up things from many books. So you can pick up any book, but just make sure that you're covering each and every unit and the subtopics that they've given you in the description, right? So that's the main thing. So yeah, I think I will stop at this, right? If there are any questions, feel free to post them. I think sir will mediate that. Yeah.
Uh, Thanks a lot, ma'am. That was really a great session we had. Such a crisp yet detailed. Got to know about the preparation part, the question syllabus format, and everything. So thank you once again. We have few questions, ma'am. I would like to take it one by one. So the first is, like, what's your take on, or do you recommend the book Five Steps to a Five in AP Biology?
Do you recommend 5 steps to a 5 in AP biology? Yes. So that I wouldn't recommend for being your main source for starting to learn the course syllabus, but it's an excellent score to practice. It is an excellent resource to practice from. Yeah. So that, yes. But if you're using for the main book where you're going to start studying from scratch, then I would prefer Barron's and Princeton, and this mainly for practice work and questions, extra questions.
Okay. The second question is, do we need to study human physiology like digestion, circulation, etc. for AP exam?
Yes. So not so much in detail. So we're not studying at a high level digestion process, but we are studying at a cellular level, right? So of course we do study fight and flight response. So that is, your endocrine system and hormones and everything. So yes, you do need to study, but that I would say maybe 10 to 12% of your syllabus would be that. Other than that is more at a micro level, right? So it's not really a whole process of digestion that you need to talk about.
Okay. Uh, Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, how many correct answers do you need to score a 5?
Okay, so to score a 5, again, now it depends from the difficulty. Like you must be familiar with like an SAT or an ACT paper. So there are scaled scores. So it's not that every time, let's say you get if you get a 70 correct answers out of 100, it'll not always translate to a 5, or it'll not always translate to a 4. Depending on the difficulty of the level of test, there will be scale scores. But on an average, as long as you get 75%, 70 to 75% of your responses correct, you can get a 5, right? So anything above a 70 to 75% of correct answers should get you a 5 on AP.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And there are a few generic questions like, on an average, how much time does it take for one to start from zero to attempt the AP biology?
Okay, so we are in what? We are in March end, right? You have your May. I would say this is cutting it a little short if you're starting right now. Not saying it's impossible. If you have a solid biology, chemistry background, you can pick up the book right away and get to it. But I would say, like, today is, if you are attempting this year, then today is when you should get started, right? So on an average, you do need, I would say, about 2 to 3 months, because I'm also factoring in, you're going to do practice papers, you're going to do extra questions and all of that. So 3 months, of course, 3 months is an ideal time. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And I guess by that, all the questions have been answered. If in case you have any other queries, you can still write it to us. We'll be happy to answer. And yeah, thank you, ma'am. It was pleasure to have you here. Got a very clear idea about AP biology. And to all the students, stay tuned for our next session. We'll meet you at 5 for AP comparative government and politics session. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.